It's the beginning of August here in central New York, and Seaberry season is well underway. We've been hand picking quite a bit for the last few days, or got a lot of nice little scrapes from it. It's a very slow, arduous, and worthwhile process to harvest Seaberry by hand. Today, Juan and I are going to be processing Seaberry in the spirit of making the harvest a little faster for us, a lot easier, and then also having the side benefit of being able to harvest softwood cuttings for propagation. And so we're going to share notes with you in this video about what that will look like. In this video we're going to be looking at Cerola, which is a really nice female cultivar. It makes a nice large orange fruit very early in the season. It's probably one of the first ripening ones for us. And we've hand-picked all the fruits that were down low, that were easy to access. And what we've noticed is we have some branches in here. For example, this one that I'm wiggling is an internal crossing branch. It's not really great for the long-term health of the plant to have a branch like this. I'd want to prune this at some point anyway. So what we can do is cut some of these branches and process these down and freeze them in a chest freezer, and after a day or so of freezing solid, they are effortless to get off of the stalks. Whereas by hand, sometimes it's very slow, there's lots of spikes. I'll demonstrate by nibbling. A lot of them pop while you pick them. It's a great way to pick. But if I can come through and say, okay, well, here's a branch that is crossing anyway. Let's snip that. I'm going to set that aside. Here's a branch that's above my head. When it gets above your head, it's a lot harder to pick by hand. I'm going to snip that. The beauty is, once we trim off these branches in order to fit this in the freezer in an effective way, we get at least 5 or 6 cuttings from this one branch before we throw this in the freezer. We'll show you more details on that in a moment. Here's a branch that's winding down. It's got a pretty weak stem on it. It probably would be shed by the plant anyway. Here's some more internal aiming branches. Here's one that's crossing over another one. Let's see what else. Here's another one aiming towards the center in a weird way. So it's pruning work we'd want to do to open up the plant anyway. And we're getting all of these that are going to be so much easier to pick. There's certainly a lot more we can cut from these plants, probably 2 or 3 times more than what's right here. But for demonstration purposes, we're going to start with this and bring it back. If we didn't want to freeze this or process the cuttings for propagation, it might still be worth doing this sort of pruning on a more mature Seaberry, one that's much taller than you, just to do the shaping of the plant and be able to sit in the shade. It's almost 90 degrees today, and sit and be able to turn the branch for picking. So you can just make it an easier way to harvest that way too. But for now, we're going to process cuttings and get the fruit ready to go in the deep freezer so it's very easy to pick later on.
Once we've collected the branches with all this beautiful fruit set, now we're going to trim these back to just generate a ton of different cuttings. So you can see in just prepping the branch to go into the freezer, we're generating our propagation material. One thing to mention is these branches that we're probably not going to use for cuttings, we don't have to trim them back. That said, I've heard some folks use the leaves as tea, so that's another yield if you care to explore that. These could be set aside as tea, and then some of these little thicker branches are gonna go into the propagation trays. And I can show also, in terms of preparing these to go into the propagation trays, we can strip off the majority of the leaves, leave just a small amount of leaves in the branch, and then do a little bit of a wound there. And now this is ready to go in the tray.
We'll go back out in the garden and cut another bunch of branches. You can see in this 50 cell flat, there's room for a huge amount more cuttings. And in this container, we've got a lot more room for stems with fruit. But we're gonna move at a pretty good clip because it's a hot day. This will get a good thorough watering once it's filled with those cuttings, and it will take the short commute to come and live for a little while in this intermittent mist area. You can see these are different female varietal seaberries and some male seaberries. Every 5 minutes, those two nozzles spray for about 10 seconds to keep them nice and moist while they develop their roots. And within 10 days, we're already starting to see some roots forming. We'll go into much more detail about this system soon enough. Thanks Humble Abode Nursery for the information on this in the first place. So we can fill this a lot more, and I think we will, but for now we're going to put this in the freezer. We're going to put this in, let it absolutely freeze rock solid, and come back to it tomorrow or the next day to get the fruits off. A little preview. When the fruits come off, one of the real nice side bonuses is each fruit is individually frozen, so they don't stick together in the bag. Like these beautiful little rock hard frozen Tic Tacs.